Lot's wife did not die because of disobedience. She was turned into a pillar of salt because she saw the truth. And that truth, a truth buried for millennia under layers of dogma and fear, shatters everything we have been told about God, about the angels, and about the true nature of sin. What if the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah was not an act of divine justice against moral corruption? What if it was a cover-up of violent, terrifying, and ruthlessly efficient sterilization of a threat, a silencing of a truth so profound, so paradigm-shifting, that it had to be erased from history with fire from the sky and written off in our sacred texts as a simple fable about a woman who couldn't let go of her past? The story we are given is a tranquilizer designed to soothe us into compliance. The reality is a stimulant, a jolt to the system that forces us to question the very foundations of our faith. We are told she looked back out of longing, out of a weak-willed nostalgia for a life of sin. But the ancient texts, when read between the lines, whisper a different story. They hint that her name, often given in Hebraic tradition as Idit, means witness. Her very identity was to see, to testify. What if her final act was not one of weakness, but the ultimate fulfillment of her purpose? She turned back not for what she was leaving behind, but to finally understand the nature of the beings that commanded her to flee. And in that one, fleeting, eternal moment, she saw it all. She saw the lie, and the price for seeing the lie was to become a permanent, silent monument to it. Forget the story you think you know. Today, we look back with her. We will see what she saw, and we will understand why she was not punished, but silenced. The core question has always been, why was looking back the one unforgivable act? In a world of murder, theft, and betrayal, why was a single glance over the shoulder worthy of instant, bizarre petrification? The answer is simple and terrifying. It wasn't a moral test. It was a tactical command. The kind of command you give when you are about to detonate a weapon so powerful, so reality-altering that to witness its unveiling is to be unmade by it. The command was not, "Don't doubt me." It was, "Do not look at the blast." To understand the truth, we must first peel back the layers of the fable. We are presented with a simple equation. Sodom was wicked, therefore God destroyed it. Lot was righteous, therefore God saved him. Lot's wife was disobedient, therefore God punished her. It's a clean, neat narrative, perfect for teaching children about consequences and the importance of obeying authority without question. But the moment you apply critical thought, the narrative disintegrates. Think about the God presented in other parts of these same texts. A God who tests Abraham but stays his hand, a God who forgives David's transgressions, a God who wrestles with Jacob and allows him to win, a God who, in later texts, preaches mercy and turning the other cheek. Does this sound like a deity who would instantly obliterate a woman for a moment of human curiosity or grief? The punishment does not fit the crime. It is wildly, grotesquely disproportionate, unless the crime wasn't what we were told. Imagine a soldier being told by his commander to take cover and not to look up as an airstrike is called in. If he disobeys and looks, and is vaporized in the blast, do we say the commander punished him for disobedience? Or do we say he suffered the direct physical consequence of his action? The story of Lot's wife makes infinitely more sense when viewed not as a theological drama, but as the eyewitness report of a military-style operation, an operation carried out by beings whose power was beyond human comprehension. The command to not look back was a safety briefing, not a loyalty test. The pillar of salt was not a magical curse. It was the described aftermath of exposure to an unimaginable energy source. This simple reframing changes everything. It forces us to ask two far more dangerous questions. What was the real sin of Sodom that warranted such a complete and total annihilation? And who, or what, were the angels sent to carry out this sentence? The answers to these questions do not lie in simplistic interpretations of morality. They lie hidden in the forbidden books, in the Gnostic heresies, and in the terrifying implications of the Book of Enoch. The truth is that Sodom's transgression was not carnal. It was cosmic. They weren't just breaking moral laws, they were breaking the laws of reality, and in doing so, They signed their own death warrant. The traditional view, the one cemented in our collective consciousness, is that Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed for their sexual depravity, specifically the sin of homosexuality. This interpretation hinges almost entirely on the scene where the men of the city surround Lot's house, demanding that he bring out his two angelic guests, that we may know them. The Hebrew word for know, yada, can indeed have a carnal meaning, but its primary meaning, used hundreds of times throughout the Bible, is simply to know, to understand, to get acquainted with, to investigate. What if the men of Sodom, a city we will soon redefine, were not driven by lust, but by a consuming, scientific, and perhaps terrified curiosity? Imagine these two beings appear in your city. They look like men, but they radiate a power, an aura of the other. They were able to strike a crowd of people with blindness in an instant. The men of the city didn't want to assault them. They wanted to understand them, to vivisect them, perhaps, to learn the secret of their power. This was not an act of lust. It was an act of intelligence gathering. It was an attempt by a city of advanced knowledge to capture and analyze beings they recognized as powerful and alien. Even the Bible itself offers a different reason for Sodom's fall, one that is almost universally ignored. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 16, verse 49, the prophet states it plainly. Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy. Arrogance, complacency, apathy. These are serious moral failings, to be sure. But are they sins that warrant total annihilation by fire from the sky? Millions live this way today. Why was Sodom singled out? Because the prophet is only giving us the surface level symptom. The arrogance of Sodom was not the simple pride of a wealthy city. It was something far deeper. It was the arrogance of a civilization that believed it was ascending to godhood. To find the source of this cosmic arrogance, we must leave the canonical Bible and venture into the forbidden texts, specifically the Book of Enoch. This ancient text, once considered scripture by early Christians, tells the story of the Watchers, a group of angels who descended to earth, took human wives, and produced giant offspring called the Nephilim. But they did more than that. They committed what the texts consider the ultimate transgression. They taught humanity forbidden knowledge. Azazel, one of the leaders, taught men the art of making swords, knives, shields, and breastplates, the secrets of warfare. He taught them about metals and how to work them. He taught women the art of deception, of cosmetics, of coloring the eyelids. Other watchers taught the secrets of sorcery, of astrology, of reading the signs of the moon and the sun. In short, the Watchers gave humanity a technological and mystical quantum leap. They kick-started a new form of civilization, one based not on slow, natural discovery, but on knowledge downloaded directly from a higher dimension. Now, imagine a city or a collection of cities founded upon this forbidden knowledge. A civilization that did not develop over millennia, but erupted into being powered by secrets that were never meant for human minds. This is the truth of Sodom. What if Sodom and Gomorrah were the Silicon Valley of the ancient world, the Los Alamos and the Area 51 of their time? A place not of crude, simple sin, but of terrifyingly advanced science, architecture, and esoteric power. Imagine a city whose buildings defy gravity, built with a knowledge of acoustics and vibration lost to time. A society powered by geothermal energy drawn directly from the fault lines they were built upon. A people who understood the secrets of consciousness, who could communicate telepathically, who were experimenting with the very fabric of space-time. Their abominations were not sexual. They were experiments that blurred the line between man and God, between this dimension and the next. They were arrogant because they had mastered the physical world. They were apathetic to the poor because their society was a strict meritocracy based on psychic or intellectual ability, a caste system of the gifted. They had, in their own eyes, transcended the limitations of what it meant to be human. They were becoming something new, something powerful, and they were a threat, not to a moral order, but to a cosmic one. Their existence violated a celestial quarantine. They were a rogue state, a breakaway civilization whose rapid, unnatural advancement threatened the carefully balanced cosmic ecosystem. From the perspective of the celestial powers, the Watchers had unleashed a virus, and Sodom was the primary infection. It had to be cauterized. This recontextualizes the entire story. The divine beings weren't coming to judge a city of sinners. They were coming to neutralize a technological and metaphysical rival. This brings us to the two visitors, the so-called angels, who arrive at the city gates. The story in Genesis 19 presents them in a strangely physical, vulnerable way. They arrive on foot. They need lodging. They eat the meal Lot prepares for them. They are so physically present that the men of the city believe they can be grabbed and captured. These are not the ethereal winged specters of Renaissance paintings. These are tangible, physical beings. What if they weren't angels in the spiritual sense at all? What if they were operatives, celestial agents sent on a reconnaissance and extraction mission? Their behavior is not that of divine messengers delivering a proclamation. It is the behavior of a two-man special forces team scoping out a target zone before an imminent strike. They enter the city. They identify their extraction target, Lot, who is described as righteous. But what does righteous mean in this context? Perhaps it simply means he was an outsider. Lot was not a native of Sodom. He was a foreigner, a resident alien. He was not part of the city's power structure, not initiated into its deepest secrets. He was clean. He was the one civilian they were tasked to save before sterilizing the entire region. Their interaction with the men of Sodom is telling. When the mob surrounds the house, the angels don't deliver a divine sermon. They take tactical action. They struck the men who were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they were weary to find the door. This is not described as a miracle. It is described as a specific, targeted effect. The Hebrew word for it, sanverum, is only used one other time in the entire Bible, when the prophet Elisha calls down the same effect on the Aramean army. It is not permanent blindness. It's a temporary state of confusion and disorientation. Imagine a modern equivalent, a flashbang grenade, a device that emits a blinding light and a deafening sound, disorienting anyone in its blast radius. The angels used a non-lethal crowd control device to secure their position. This is the act of a soldier, not a seraph. Their entire demeanor is one of urgency and military precision. They tell Lot, "Get them out of here, because we are going to destroy this place." The outcry to the Lord has become so great that he has sent us to destroy it. This isn't a prophecy. It is a briefing. The decision has been made. The strike is imminent. We are the advance team. Your evacuation window is now. Their final command is the most famous and the most misunderstood. Flee for your lives. Don't look back, and don't stop anywhere on the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away. This is not a test of faith. This is an evacuation protocol. It is a list of instructions for surviving a cataclysm. Don't stop anywhere on the plain implies a massive blast radius. Flee to the mountains suggests the need for cover, to put a geological barrier between yourself and the event. And don't look back is the most crucial survival instruction of all. It's a warning about direct exposure to the weapon's detonation. These were not angels of mercy. They were angels of death, harbingers of a destruction so absolute that it would leave nothing behind but scorched earth, and a cautionary tale scrubbed clean of its terrifying truth. And now we must place ourselves in the mind of Lot's wife. We must feel what she felt as she was ripped from her home. We call her Lot's wife, a possession, an afterthought in the story. She is nameless, a symbol, but she was a person, a woman who had built a life in Sodom. Perhaps unlike Lot, she was a native of the city. Perhaps she had friends there, family. Perhaps she understood, on some level, the wonders of her home. Even if she wasn't part of the inner circle of its esoteric masters. She is running, her husband dragging her by the hand, her two daughters in tow. The command from the strange, powerful men echoes in her ears. Don't look back. But it's an impossible command. Everything she has ever known is behind her. Her home, her community, the world that made sense to her. It is being erased from existence on the order of beings she just met. Grief wars with fear. Confusion wars with the instinct for survival. Why? Why is this happening? Are the people of her city truly so evil that every man, woman, and child deserves to be incinerated? Or is something else going on? A doubt, a seed of terrible suspicion, begins to sprout in her mind. These angels, these messengers of God, their power was cold, clinical, and utterly ruthless. The way they blinded the men at the door was not divine, it was technological. Their command to flee was not a blessing, it was a tactical order. The suspicion grows into a terrifying certainty. She is not fleeing from the judgment of a righteous God. She is fleeing from an execution squad. And her city is not being punished, it is being purged. The air itself begins to change. A deep subaudible hum vibrates through the soles of her feet, a sound that feels less like hearing and more like a cellular dissolution. The sky, once dark with the pre-dawn gloom, begins to glow with a sickly, impossible light. Not the gentle orange of sunrise, but a fierce strobing magnesium, white that pulses from behind them. Then comes the sound, a sound that is not a sound. A high-frequency shriek that tears at the fabric of the air, followed by a roar so deep and powerful. It feels as if the planet itself is cracking open. It is the sound of overwhelming, unnatural power being unleashed. Lot is screaming at her. "Keep running, don't look!" But her feet slow. The doubt has become a consuming need. She has to know. She has to bear witness. Her name is Idit. She is the witness. It is her purpose. She stops, she turns, and in that moment, time freezes and she sees the truth. It is not fire and brimstone raining down from a cloudy sky. That is the poetry of traumatized survivors, the attempt by a primitive vocabulary to describe the indescribable. What she sees is far more terrifying, far more precise. Hanging in the sky above the smoldering plain is a vast, dark object. It is not a cloud. It is structured, metallic, geometric, utterly alien. It is the chariot of the Lord, the Merkabah. But it is no benevolent vehicle of ascension. It is a warship. From the belly of this silent, dreadful craft, beams of coherent light, brighter than 1,000 suns, lance downwards. They are not random. They are surgical. One beam strikes the great central ziggurat of Sodom, and the structure doesn't crumble, it vaporizes. It turns to incandescent gas in less than a second. Another beam sweeps across the city grid, and entire districts vanish in a wave of white heat. She sees the energy field expanding, a shimmering dome of pure force that boils the Jordan River and turns the very ground into a molten, glassy sea. The brimstone, the sulfur, is not raining from the sky. It is the atmosphere itself being superheated and transmuted, the air catching fire as the weapon's discharge rips oxygen atoms apart. This is not the wrath of a god. This is physics. This is advanced weaponry, and in that flash of cosmic horror, she sees something else. On a ridge overlooking the destruction, silhouetted against the impossible light, she sees them. The angels. They are not in their human guise now. The light of the weapon reveals their true forms, or perhaps the shock of the event allows her to see past the veil. They are not men. They are tall, silent, terrifying figures, draped in light and shadow, their forms shifting and indistinct, their presence radiating a coldness that chills the soul more than any fire could. They are not judging. They are observing, overseeing the successful completion of their mission. And in that final, horrifying epiphany, Lot's wife understands the ultimate truth. The being they called God, the authority these angels served, was not a loving father. It was a cosmic power, a galactic warden, or perhaps a Gnostic demiurge, a lesser, flawed god jealously guarding its creation against any who would seek to evolve beyond its control. The beings who promised them salvation were the very same beings carrying out their genocide, the ultimate betrayal, the final lie. It was never about sin. It was always about control. It was not a punishment. It was an extermination. The shock of this revelation is more powerful than the heat wave, more destructive than the shock wave. It is a truth so absolute, so fundamentally shattering to the human psyche, that the mind cannot contain it. It is a glimpse into the void, a direct look at the true, terrifying, and impersonal nature of the powers that govern the universe. And her body, unable to process this psychic cataclysm, does the only thing it can: it freezes. The wave of intense energy from the blast washes over her. It is not a gentle, magical transformation. It is a brutal, physical process. Imagine a nuclear detonation. The initial wave of thermal radiation travels at the speed of light. In that instant, every drop of moisture in her body is flash, boiled and vaporized. The soft tissues are incinerated and carbonized. The subsequent pressure wave then hits, compacting the remaining calcified material. The intense heat and exotic energies of the weapon don't just burn, they transmute. They fuse the minerals in her bones, the salt in her blood and cells, into a single crystalline matrix. She was not turned tintont, a pillar of salt. She was de-reduced to one. She became a statue of flash, fossilized, salt, encrusted calcium, a stark white monument frozen in the very act of seeing the truth. This is the price of forbidden knowledge. It's not a curse from a vengeful God. It's a law of cosmic physics. The human nervous system, the human soul, is not designed to witness the raw mechanics of creation and destruction. To look upon the face of the architect is to have your own blueprint erased. The Gnostic texts talk about this. They believed that Sophia, or wisdom, fell from the divine realm by trying to comprehend the unknowable. Lot's wife, in her own small way, reenacted that fall. She reached for a truth that was too big, and it broke her. But her act was not in vain. The pillar of salt, which the historian Josephus claimed was still visible in his day, became something more than the remnant of a dead woman. It became a symbol, a warning. The conventional narrative tells us it was a warning against disobedience, but the forbidden truth is that it was a warning from the other side. She became an eternal witness. Salt is a preservative. Her act, and its consequence, preserved a truth that the narrative spinners tried to bury. Her silent, screaming form stood on that plane for centuries, a testament not to God's justice, but to his terrible secret. It was a landmark of the cover-up, and so the story had to be changed. The sanitized version we have today was a necessary act of propaganda. Lot and his daughters survived, and they told a story, but it was a story filtered through trauma and fear. A story they had to make palatable to survive in the world that remained. You cannot go to the neighboring towns and say, "Our home was destroyed by beings from the sky with weapons of light because we had unlocked the secrets of the universe." They would stone you as a madman or a heretic. So you say, "We were a sinful people and God punished us, but we were righteous, so he saved us." It's a story that allows you to reintegrate. It's a story that reinforces the power structure of the priests and kings who would come to control the narrative. The true story of a civilization that grew too powerful, that was experimenting with forces beyond its station, and was violently purged by its celestial overseers, is far too dangerous. It suggests that our gods may not be our friends. It suggests that there is knowledge we are not meant to have. It suggests that humanity's progress is not our own to determine, but is allowed only within certain, heavily policed boundaries. This theme echoes throughout the Bible. The Tower of Babel. Humanity unites with one language, one purpose, to build a tower to the heavens, a symbol of reaching for divine status. The response, not a gentle warning, but a confusion of their language, a scattering of the people. Their technological and social progress is deliberately smashed. The Great Flood. The world is filled with the Nephilim, the offspring of angels and humans, and humanity has been corrupted by forbidden knowledge. The response, a total reset. A global flood that wipes the slate clean, saving only one family to start over. The story of Sodom is another chapter in this same secret history. A history not of God and man, but of warden and prisoner. A cycle of humanity acquiring forbidden knowledge, reaching for power, and being violently put back in its place. Lot's wife is the tragic hero of this cycle. She is the one who dared to look. She is the one who paid the price for seeing the truth of her own annihilation. Her story is not a cautionary tale against looking back at your past. It is a chilling invitation to look back at Sotor's past, at the stories we've been told, and to question the narrative. It is a challenge to see the terrifying truth that may be hiding behind the simple fables. She was silenced. Her body turned to a mineral monument. Her story twisted into a tool of obedience, but the truth cannot be silenced forever. It is preserved, like her, in salt and stone, waiting in the apocrypha, in the Gnostic Gospels, in the coded language of our own sacred texts. It waits for those with the courage to stop running, to turn around, and to face the blinding light of what really happened. The pillar of salt stood for centuries as a silent monument, a warning. But a warning against what? Disobeying God, or daring to look behind the curtain and see who is truly pulling the strings. The next time you read these ancient stories, ask yourself, what are they trying to stop you from seeing? What truth are they afraid you might discover if you too dared to look back?